Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is June 29th, 2025. I'm here recording a story, uh, second story in this short series. Again, trying to catch up to events before the analysis become outdated, before the events have already become old news. So about a month ago, a little bit over a month ago, I started seeing all these stories, uh, and I'm going to go through them in a minute. That is reporting that Xi Jinping has been thrown out and that his allies in the People's Liberation Army are falling apart, falling, and that his enemies are taking over in the Xi Jinping in the People's Liberation Army. Uh, so I'm talking about this in terms of reporting that yes, there are all these rumors that Xi Jinping might have might be losing power, uh, that he probably has lost quite a bit of power just because the there's a perception that the PLA is no longer doing Xi Jinping's biddings. But and these rumors have, or in particular, Lei has made some very specific predictions. A couple weeks ago, she reported that the CCP, the Politburo Central Committee, are having meetings or would be having meetings in the mid-June timeframe, starting the mid-June timeframe throughout the rest of June, uh, to pronounce the new leaders of the uh, Central Committee. That Xi Jinping and his allies have been mostly replaced, and that the new people are being named. Uh, this is the longer story. Looking for where she named them. Where was this story? But the story of Xi Jinping's being replaced is not just the Wang Yan series of stories. Uh, it's also coming from other sources. Uh, so there's some corroboration of that uh, things are happening, and that they soon will be calling for a plenum, the party plenum, perhaps that's the right term, where they're going to make a real announcement sometime before August, between now and August. And then, of course, we will know for sure if Xi Jinping has been formally replaced during the Communist Party birthday parade in September. But they have noted that Xi Jinping currently is not uh, very having many public events. That when he recently met with foreign leaders, that he was meeting people from a side chamber in Zhongnanhai, the Communist Party central headquarters, not inside the regular meeting hall where they usually have foreign events, but in these side chambers. So these kind of terminology, while they seem to be important, they might not indicate, uh, they, they might not be truly significant because they usually do not signal changes, real changes in the party's directions and strategies, but more tactical shifts. The vision hasn't changed. It's still a communist party. They are still trying to hold on to power and suppress the opposition, that Taiwan is still facing a significant military threat, that they cannot declare independence. These kind of overall strategic problems for America and for Taiwan have not really changed. The Whether these are true, like I said, we will find out soon enough when they start having the plenum meetings, and also for sure, when they had the passing review, the military parade in September. Uh, and of course, as we see more, if Xi Jinping it continues to not have many public events. So, as I have discussed before, the Communist Party has had significant ideological issue, ideological dissonance, because during the 90s, starting in the 90s and all of the 2000s, the early aughts, the Communist Party became a money-making machine for the cadre and for the party elites, where it's all about how much money can you make and how much bribes you can take to build your own personal fortune. That they've stopped looking at. They started to only pay lip service to the ideals of communism, that they're no longer really paying attention to people's problems, that they are becoming allies of the of the of the rich and powerful. They are powerful themselves, but they're really becoming these sycophants of the local elites, and that is antithetical to the original raison d'être of the Chinese Communist Party, where they started out as a peasant revolt against the landowners, against the moneylenders, against the people who make the peasants' life hard by charging them money. But now they are, so that was the original vision, that founding myth, founding vision that of the Communist Party, that they are anti-corruption, that they will make things work, and that they will protect the peasants and the proletariat. But now they're not doing that. So that the fact that the cadre stopped caring about these things, obviously they didn't care about the vision anymore, by the fact that they were not caring about it, and they were just focused on making money. But the problem is that you still have to talk the talk to continue advancing, uh, because that was still the evaluation criteria, even though you are subverting the evaluation criteria by giving bribes. You still have to talk the talk, because that's how they need to be able to demonstrate that that's why you're getting promoted in the system. So that internalizing that cognitive dissonance make the cadre less effective in understanding problems, because they have to lie to themselves all the time. Once you start lying, then you don't stop. And eventually you no longer understand what is true and what is false, because you've been lying to yourself for so long. And that means the organization stops being a computing organization. It stops processing information, because again, it no longer is able to perceive, orient, yeah, it's no longer able to observe, orient, uh, or act on the problem. You may be able to decide, but it's no longer able to do any of the OODA loop, because they've been lying to themselves. And if you lie, you cannot observe. And if you lie to each other, then you cannot orient. And you may be able to decide, but then you still cannot act, because you're lying to your boss that you have accomplished when you haven't not accomplished your job. So complete OODA loop failure. That means the organization is no longer existing, but as an information processing mechanism. So that's the first thing with the communist, when the communists stray from the vision. And secondly, the reason why the Communist Party clung to their founding myth of being the heroes of the Chinese peasant was because they were solving a real problem back then, and it was a common historical motif in Chinese history that the mandate from heaven involves populist support from the peasants, that they are wresting the mandate of heaven from the current emperors, the current dynasty, because the current dynasty is no longer taking care of the peasants. And when Mao headed up the Communist Party and started promulgating their peasant revolt message, he was seizing on this Chinese historical motif of the mandate of heaven from taking care of the peasants. And therefore, when the Communist Party stopped taking care of the peasants, when they were siding with the land developer, landowners, banks, and everyone else, the rich and powerful, in trampling the peasants, causing people to protest. They were making themselves vulnerable to new groups of insurgents who can seize the mandate from heaven by taking care of the peasants when the Communist Party is not. And that is really the problem that Xi Jinping was trying to solve when he took over and started trying to revive the Communist Party by taking them back to their founding myth and founding purpose of all the anti-corruption trials historically, the Chinese Communist Party was very reluctant in publicizing any of these corruption problems because they are an admission that there is a problem wrong with the Communist Party. That's why you have all the people that are taking money, even though, yes, everyone knows they're taking money. But to actually come out and say it is to admit that some of them at least were wrong. And once you start to open up the door, then how do you know all the rest of them are not wrong either, right? So there were the face-saving uh, attitude of the Chinese, especially the Chinese Communist Party, is to used to be to try to sweep everything under the rug, that they will punish people, but secretly. Uh, and so when Xi Jinping started with all the anti-corruption trials, they were having an effect of uh, preventing people from conspicuous consumption. Uh, that was plainly seen in Beijing when in the uh, starting in 2019 and onward throughout the post-COVID years, uh, Beijing was significantly less crowded, less hopping commercially as it used to be before. That used to be that there were cars everywhere, that streets were always crowded, that there were lots and lots of shops, flea markets, malls, full of people everywhere, tons and tons of people shopping, spending money, going to restaurants, going to bars, karaoke, everything. But that almost overnight stopped happening in Beijing. And it was just empty in Beijing, uh, even today. And that was from the anti-corruption trials. Uh, you know, Xi Jinping was able to impart that message to the Communist Party and to the rest of the Chinese people that the Communist Party is serious again about trying to do something that's relevant to their purpose. But then when you start doing that, as opposed to all the thin-skinned people, the problem is not really that you're inviting doubt to your problem. Is that then people think that they can start feeding negative information to the organization to try to get them to fix problems. They started talking about all of the other corruption issues, and then just make the problem seem bigger and bigger and become taking on a momentum of that things are very, very wrong, and you need to take out a lot of people. You need to punish tons more and more people, uh, which that is when the system becomes real unstable. That when you take out too many of the party cadre, that then the party becomes critically unable to protect itself. That's when the party becomes really threatened and start to overreact. Uh, because the party members no longer feel that the party is protecting them, that they can, how you say it, uh, that they can no longer stay members of the party and still get they, their loyalty is no longer being rewarded with protection. Uh, that the party is no longer taking care of them. But this is a different story. But so in this case, what the story signifies is that perhaps a reactionary element of the CCP are taking over by removing Xi Jinping from power and seizing control to try to restore China to the 1990s and 2000 period of growth, of economic growth. Because the reason, one of the excuses they're using to remove Xi Jinping from power is because of the recent Chinese economic recession. That China is having an economic recession is happening, but people, especially Marxist trained analysts, and Americans overemphasize the importance of economics uh, in political affairs. But money is not everything. People are not economicus. People are not homo economicus. Uh, just because you are not making money does not mean you are automatically upset at the regime and demanding change. There are other things are required before economic hardship itself drive regime change, and the failure of the Western sanctions regime in regime change plainly demonstrate that economic recessions do not really drive uh, governments out of power. They do in America, but that's a different story. It's more that the economic recession is representative of failures in governance. That's why American governments change hand during economic recessions. Uh, Same thing in China. That the reactionary element, Hu Jintao and the others, are potentially taking power from Xi Jinping by saying that Xi Jinping is not managing the economy uh, well, and that's why they need to take over. And I'm not sure if they really understand. They have not. They have yet to demonstrate that they really understand how to do this economic thing, because Chinese economy has not fundamentally changed course. Xi Jinping actually was on the right track by trying to emphasize the peasantry, by trying to send people back to the farms, by glamorizing the rural life, by encouraging uh, startups that revitalize the countryside. Uh, that is actually much more effective at solving the Chinese structural economic problems than bringing back foreign investment. The China needs to, first of all, de-urbanize, because urbanization is bringing a lot of the social problems. The lay down movement, the the marriage issues, the mental illnesses, and all the urban violence. Those are all problems from urban living, and Xi Jinping is actually addressing those issues, whereas I don't think, well, he may not understand that's why he's addressing them, but at least he's addressing them, uh, trying to do the right thing here. Whereas the reactionary elements definitely do not. They're just trying to go back to the money making days. So if they do take over, that's great for me, because obviously I hate the commies, and I would love for the communists to fall as soon as possible, and a retrenchment of the Communist Party corruption is will make that happen faster. America should try to encourage these things to happen if we want to jujitsu the Chinese Communist Party into taking itself down. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if people, if Americans are smart enough to make that happen. So, or even that Lai Ching-te and all his babas understand that that's what they need to do because they are so myopic and so occupied with their own identity that they cannot try to understand the enemy. But anyway, so the point is that these are the rumors that's happening, and we'll see very soon if they are true or not. And these the evidence that Lei and others have discussed are verifiable, and they have made concrete short-term, near-term predictions that we can test very easily. So that does indicate that they are valid predictions, and we shall see. And thank you all for joining me in this discussion of what's going on with China, and may the worlds continue to be very interesting places. Thank you all. Have a good week.